All right, this is a video going over how much it cost me to rebuild my engine in my 2014 Scion FRS. So I'm going to go over the details of how much the majority of the parts costed. And there's some parts I'm not going to really include, like sealant, oil, and stuff like that. And also my blood, sweat, and tears for how long it took me to put everything back together. But anyways, I'll go over the basics of it. So about a year ago, I brought my engine to a machine shop to get it checked out and find the sizes of everything. He suggested that I go up a bore, so I went up to 86.25 millimeters. I went with Manley Extreme Duty pistons, and then I went with the Manley Pro Series I-beams. I went with a OEM crankshaft, and then I went with the Kings Racing main bearings, and then the Kings Racing rod bearings. So that's the internals. And then with the valves, I went with the Supertech Iconal, and then the Supertech black nitrate intake and exhaust valves. So they were a little bit much, but I'll go over the prices of everything, which I have them on my phone here. So first I will go over the stuff that I didn't necessarily need to replace. So these prices are a little subjective because I replaced more stuff than I necessarily had to, like the timing chain cover, the bed plate, and that kind of stuff. I didn't include the oil pan because I put the oil pan on from the turbo kit, but you could just assume that if you use a stock oil pan and you didn't mess it up when taking it off, then you saved the money there, or you didn't have to worry about the cost there. So anyways, I'm going to get into it. So timing chain cover was $336.42. The upper oil pan, which I got it for the manual transmission one. There is a difference between the manual and the automatic one. The automatic one has some kind of cooling system that goes to the transmission, so there's an extra outlet for the coolant line. And if you get the manual one, that outlet is blocked up. So I got the manual one. It was $243.78. I got a new dipstick tube. That was $23.35. Oil pan baffle. There's like a baffle thing that goes on the inside of the bed plate. That was $9.38. I got a new oil pickup tube. That was $20.60. And then shipping and tax came out to $50.25. For my total for these parts is $684.78. Next, I'm going to go on the extra stuff that I didn't necessarily have to replace as well. So these first few pieces aren't really necessary. I just went better safe than sorry. The main things that are necessary are going to be like your O-rings and gaskets and that kind of stuff. And that's included in here as well. But next is the engine wiring harness. I replaced the entire wiring harness that goes over the top of the engine and connects to all your sensors and all that stuff. So I replaced that as well. That was $304.04. The engine oil pan gasket. So there's like these two little gaskets that go in the oil pan, which I believe that comes in the complete gasket kit. But I think I bought extras just in case. But that was $6.36. I bought a new crankshaft position sensor, which, again, if yours isn't messed up, you don't really need to replace it. But if I'm spending that big money, that big bucks on all this stuff, I'm just going to replace stuff and better be safe than sorry. But that came out to $105.68. The crank position sensor plate, there's like a plate on the back of it, that was $26.01. The crank pulley bolt, so the main bolt that's in the middle of the crankshaft and the harmonic balancer, that was $8.62. The crank pulley spacer, so there's a spacer behind the crank pulley itself, and that came out to $42.91 for the spacer. And then I bought new direct injector O-rings and gaskets and that kind of stuff, and those came out to $5.72 per piece, and I got 4 of them, and then there's 3 sets, so 12 of them, so 12 times $5.72. And then I bought new rocker arms as well. The rocker arms were quite expensive. I don't know what this guy is waiting for. The guy behind me, it's going to be a little awkward. I bought new rocker arms. I didn't use them all because the machine shop already checked the spacing and everything, so I only used some of them. But it came out to $27.59 per rocker arm, and there's 16 of them. And then I'm going to see what this guy wants. And then, yep, there we go. They're gone. And then next I went with, I got new lifters too. So the lifters came out to $10.50 a piece. And again, there's 16 of them. There's these little tiny strainer filters that go inside of the cam carrier assembly. I believe that's where it is. There's 2 of them on each side. So on the driver's side and the passenger side, there's these 2 little strainer filters. And those strainer filters are for the variable valve timing is what I was told. So it helps regulate the pressure for those. And I'd recommend replacing those too. Even if they look fine, I would still replace them because they're not that expensive. And if you're spending this much money on a whole engine build, you'd better be safe than sorry. But those came out to $7.29 a piece, and there are 4 of them, so 2 on each side. The water pump, again, you don't really have to get a new one. I did. That was $153.54. The timing chain cover bolts. So I bought every single bolt for the timing chain cover. There's 32 of them. So the first one, there was 2 of them. They were 94 cents a piece. The second bolt, there are 3 of them. They're $1.94 a piece. So times 3. And then the third one are $1.95 a piece, and there are 7 of them. And then the last bolts, there's 20 of them, and they are 94 cents a piece. After all that, I added shipping and tax. So shipping was $38.95, and then the tax was $128.25. My total came out to $1,632.97. Again, so some of these prices you can avoid. So I mean, I'll have this whole list posted in the description, and you could just subtract whatever things that you don't necessarily need, like the timing chain cover, the water pump, and the bed plate, and that kind of stuff. You don't exactly need. The main thing that you really, really need is the entire gasket kit, because that is going to be important. So again, I bought grounding cables because I snapped them pulling the engine out. So I bought grounding cables. Geez, I can't speak. So there's one on this side, and then there's one over here, which I'm not recording, but you can see where I'm pointing. So on this side, and then on this side. So one of them was $8.71, and then one was $6.69, plus shipping and tax, and the total came out to $28.92. So I bought valve shims as well. So these shims go on the tops of the valves, and they seat between the valves and the rocker arms. So they're spacers, but they call them shims. Make sure you get the right size and you check the valve lash on them. I didn't know that when I ordered them, so I ordered 16 of them, and I got the wrong sizes, and I had to kind of just make do with what I got. And my valves click a lot, like where my rockers are and my shims are, because of that. And the machine shop, he told me that would happen. And he told me that if you didn't have the right spacing, it would just click a lot. And they're pretty loud. And I tried to get them as close to spec as possible. And I got the majority of them to spec. But there were some that were just like a little bit off. I'm not really concerned about the engine being like messed up or anything. But if I want to replace them, I kind of have to pull the engine again. But anyways, there are 16 of those valve shims to go with the 16 valves and the 16 rocker arms. And those valve shims are $7.80 a piece times 16. So you add the shipping as well. The shipping was $11.34. And my total was $136.14. So after that, I included a brand new crankshaft. So the crankshaft, I bought it from, a lot of these parts I bought from toyotaparts.com and whatever website. So I'm in the Bay Area, so some of the stuff is a little expensive here, just like my machine shop. It was a little on the pricier side from what I've heard. And it took a while because he was a one-man shop for the most part. But anyways, after that, we have the crankshaft. It was $536.02, with tax being $46.90, shipping being $24.58, for a total of $607.50. The next part is the main case bolts. So I didn't go with the ARP case bolts, and I'll tell you why is because when I was contacting the parts company, I went through MA Performance for all my internals, rods, pistons, and valves, and all that stuff. And the guy who I was talking to suggested that I do more research on the ARP case bolts. And he said there was research found that when the engine started getting hot and metal started expanding and all that, the case bolts, because they're like stronger, they don't expand at the same rate, and it kind of oval oblong shapes your main bearings, and it kind of pinches down on your crankshaft a little more, and it messes up your clearances. And from what I found, that is true, and that's why I avoided the ARP case bolts, because they have too much clamping power and they don't stretch along with the heat as well as with the block. So they have different expansion rates. So I would recommend going the main case bolts, unless you could find otherwise to suggest that you should go with the ARP case bolts. I would just stick with the main case bolts from the factory, the OE ones. But anyways, there are 10 case bolts and there are 10 main case washers. And then there are also 5 exterior bolts for the cylinder block, or for the short block itself. So the main case bolts, each one was $6.01. And there's 10 of them, so $60.10. And then the main case washer, again, there's 10 of them, and they're 55 cents a piece. And then the exterior case bolts are $1.85 a piece, and there are 5 of them. So next, I will be going into the internals, so the connecting rods, the pistons, the valves, and then the bearings. So again, I ordered these through MA Performance, and I was able to work with them. I got a little bit of some money shaved off here and there. So this total might be a little inaccurate if you add up all these numbers, and you might not get exactly the same total that I'm going to tell you here. But anyways, the Manley I-beam connecting rods, these are the Pro Series. They are $930.76, and that is for a set of 4. They came with the ARP 2000 rod cap bolts. And by the way, those are extremely tight on. I'd highly recommend getting a vise or something to hold the piston or the connecting rods still so you can crack them loose, because they're very hard to get apart. And then also, when you're taking them apart too, I had to hold the connecting rod, like this is the big end, this is where the cap is and all that, and the cap is really like stuck on there from the dowel pins that are inside the cap. So I had to take a mallet and a rubber mallet. I had to just keep sliding it down it, flipping it, sliding it, flipping it, sliding it, until eventually the rod cap came off and I was able to take everything apart. But after that is the Manley Extreme Duty pistons. So these were bored at 86.25 millimeters, and those came out to $667.92. And again, there's 4 that came with the compression rings. That came with the oil rings, the scraper expander, and all that stuff. It also came with the wrist pins, and then it also came with the circlips. So it came with everything you need, and then you just need to get the connecting rods to put them together. Next is the SuperTech intake valves. I believe those are the black nitride ones. They were $189.22, and that's for a set of 8, because there's 4 on this side, 4 on the intake, 4 on the passenger side intake, and then 4 on the driver side intake. When there are 16 valves total. So the next is going to be, I don't know if I said that one. The SuperTech intake valves were $189.22. Next is the SuperTech exhaust valves, which are the Iconal ones, I believe. And there are 8 of them again. And this is the price for all 8 of them too. They were $249.96. And again, there's 4 on the driver's side, and 4 on the passenger side. So next I have the King's rod bearings. So that is the full set. You don't have to buy them individually for all these things too. So the King's rod bearings were $155.99. Next is the King's main bearings. Those were $203.99. And then tax and shipping and all that stuff came out to $186.49. for a grand total of $2,413.61. So after that, we have almost the rest of the stuff. We're almost there. So next, I got HKS Superfire spark plugs. Those were $26.97 a piece, and there are 4 of them. Next is the engine gasket kit. So that's the gasket kit that has all the O-rings. It has all the seals and stuff that you need. It even comes with a pack of head gaskets. I didn't use those head gaskets. I still have them, so that could be some money saved there if I can sell them and get a decent price back on them. I'm trying to sell them for like $80, but I mean, you never know. The whole kit itself, though, was $222.02. So again, if you could sell those head gaskets for like $80, and if you bought a better pair of head gaskets, there's a car coming by. But if you bought a better pair of head gaskets, I went with Tomei head gaskets, the 5 layers. And the Tomei 5-layer head gaskets came out to $108. And then I got ARP head studs. So these are the studs that you screw in by hand, and then they have the nuts as well that go on top of them. This road is really busy. Wasn't that busy a while ago. But anyways, the ARP head studs, so those I got for $232.62. So in the manual for the ARP head studs, it says to tighten them by hand, and you're also supposed to clean out the threads before you even put them in. So I used the thread chaser stuff, and I twisted them in, and they were getting really, really tight really, really quickly. And that's because they were kind of getting waterlocked and all that, because there was moisture and other sorts of stuff in there. And we just tightened them until you had to like put some serious force on the Allen wrench, because there's a little Allen wrench slot on the tops of those bolts, and you just twist them. And I twisted them until they bottomed out pretty much. And then you could tell, like, when it's like really tight and you really have to put a lot of force on it, that's where you stop, because it just tells you to hand tighten them. And then after that is when you do your torque sequence. So your 1, 2, your 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then it depends on each side of the head too. So the total for all those things, the spark plugs, gasket kit, ARP studs, and then the head gasket kit was $670.52. Then I also bought some OEM oil pan bolts. So they're a little tiny bolts. They're like 10 millimeter. They have a little Phillips head bit on the inside of them, so you could take them off and on with a Phillips head screwdriver. Not sure why you would do that. Not sure why you would torque it down with that either. But they were $1.59 a piece, and I bought 16 of them because you use 2 underneath the transmission as well. There's a little cover thing that covers the flywheel, I guess, from debris and all that kind of stuff. And then shipping was $24.62. So the total for that came out to $50.06. Shipping was a little expensive on that, but, you know. And then the last few things, I bought a timing chain kit. If you have everything apart, you might as well replace the timing chain, you know, the timing chain and the tensioner and the guides and all that stuff, because you're going through the trouble of timing the engine, and you already have it out. It's already accessible. You might as well replace it. But if you want to save the cost on it, this could be an avoidable cost. I would highly recommend that you do actually do this, though, and you won't have to later, in case you're worried about timing chain stretch and all that kind of stuff too. But the timing chain kit that I got was $261.97. Shipping was $29.99 for a grand total of $291.96. So after that is my final cost, which is my machine shop cost. So my machine shop, I'll tell you what he did. So he put the valves in for me. So he had to do all the measurements and all that kind of stuff, and seat the valves correctly. The valves that I got, the intake ones, were actually slightly bigger than stock. So he had to make some adjustments on that. Then he also put guides, I believe in, or he checked the guides at least. And then he had to put valve stem seals in. And then he resurfaced the head and all that kind of stuff. So it was all ready. As well, he did the boring and the honing of the block itself and checked the specs and tolerances of that stuff. He didn't do a line hone, which was very interesting. And he said he couldn't because he doesn't have the equipment for it. So last thing I had him do is gap my piston rings. So that way I didn't have to worry about messing that up, which that was something I was kind of iffy on him doing versus me doing. Because, I mean, I put the whole block together, piece by piece, and all that, and to not have gapped the rings just kind of feels like I didn't really do the whole thing. The machine shop total came out to $1,730, and the grand total for the entire engine build is $8,282.20. Now, again, there's some costs that are hidden in there, some costs that I didn't include, like engine oil. So I used assembly lube too. You use the assembly lube on the bearings, the main bearings and the rod bearings on the insides of them. And then brake clean I didn't include. And then sealant I didn't include. I used permatex Optimum Black Ultra Flex stuff. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I can include it in the description. And then engine oil as well. So I used conventional 5W20 because 0W20 conventional doesn't exist apparently. So I went with that, and then doing the break-in period itself, So the break-in period that I was following, which was on MA Performance's website, they said to run the car for about 15 to 20 minutes, and then at around 2,000 to 3,000 RPM. And then after that, they say to just turn it off, drain the oil, put new oil in it, and then they say to do vacuum pulls for 30 miles. So vacuum pull, this is with a turbo as well. So the vacuum pulls means you just let the car brake by the engine. Like you let the engine slow the car down, essentially. So I did that, and then the next part that they have for the break-in is to drive it 2,000 to 3,000 miles and then change the oil again. I'm not entirely familiar with the whole engine break-in period and what is fact and what is fiction. So I've heard that you don't have to do any of that stuff and you can just drive the car like normal. And I've heard it's really important to do that stuff. So I don't really know, and I can't tell you what is true and what isn't, but I'm just going off of what their website said. And, you know, I'm going to hope for the best. After the 2,000 to 3,000 miles, they tell you you're good to use synthetic oil again or whatever your manufacturer recommends. I believe I might be going with at least 5W20 from now on synthetic, because this car takes originally 0W20, but I think I'm going to go with 5W20 from now on the full synthetic. But yeah, the costs, they're pretty high, and it's worth it though. You know, you get a cool, fully built car. The car sounds great and everything, and I love the way it drives. You know, it feels really good too. I don't hear any crazy oblong sounds. I would definitely make sure you check all your torques and stuff. Even if you've already, or even if you haven't taken off some parts on the inside of the engine, I would still suggest that you still check them just to make sure. Like maybe you got it back from the machine shop and he took one of those oil blocker plugs out or one of those covers or something. And I would still at least check the torque of those bolts at the very minimum. But yeah, everything runs pretty good. You know, there's some oopsies and some what ifs and buts and all that kind of stuff with this thing. And that's just how it's going to be. Getting it in was very easy, actually. Like we left the transmission inside the car. And when we lowered it in, we didn't put the studs that are on the bottom part of the bed plate, which go into the bottom of the transmission bell housing. We didn't put those in, and it just slipped right in. And then after that, we put those bolts in and we tightened them. We did the nut to nut trick where that's how you could tighten a stud. And then we did that, and then we were able to crank it down that way. But now I will just show you what it looks like, you know, from close up. So that's the whole engine and everything. So, you know, some stuff you're going to be able to reuse, and some stuff I have more than you need just for an engine rebuild. But I'm not entirely sure what the entire specs are on everything in terms of like horsepower gain and all that. I believe my compression ratio went from 12.5 to a 10 to 1, 12.5 to 1, and it is now a 10 to 1 ratio with the mainly extreme duty pistons. But yeah, it sounds nice, and I mean, I couldn't be happier with it, except for the valves. I could be happier with that. I would highly recommend getting the right tightness of valves and all that stuff. But yeah, I'm going to start it up so that way you can hear what it sounds like. And yeah. All right, so this is inside of it. Yeah.